guys, welcome to RGH Press. I'm Todd, known as DM Blackwall. I am hosting as a guest today. Ryan will be joining us momentarily. He is really excited to tell you all about a bunch of upcoming projects and events, and I'm excited to see him back on YouTube after a year. If anyone doesn't know who I am the author of Horde Wars Advanced, which is a medieval D12 RPG. You can find it on blackwallgames.com. And we're also working on a sci fi game called Dropship that should be out, call it May or June of next year. And we are doing a 4th of July sale, 4th of July only. It'll be $15 off all softcover books, which are made in the United States to celebrate our nation's birthday. Without further ado, though, please join me, Ryan Howard of RGH Press.
Blackwall, thank you so much for hosting tonight.
You're welcome.
To let everyone know kind of what's going on here, right around the time that I folded Rolling Bones, Blackwall reached out to me and said, hey, I understand why you decided to kind of, fold up shop and stop doing Rolling Bones, but it's a shame to let the audience that you built go to waste. At some point, would you be willing to do some kind of stream where I interviewed you and asked you questions about project that you're working on? And so this has been kind of an idea that we've had on the back burner for, I think, like 8 months now.
Yeah.
A lot of life stuff happened between now and then, but here we are, and I have a lot to talk about tonight. So thank you for facilitating this and for coming to me with that idea. And I think this is going to be a great stream tonight.
You're welcome. I'm excited to be here. So I guess the first question people are going to want to know is, where have you been?
So if you follow, Substack and Twitter, you see that I'm there. I've still been in the Basic Experts Gilded server. I released a book. I actually was able to get the Rakes Codex of Nighthaven out the door. It is available now on drive-thru, on Lulu. You can get both the POD and PDF bundled together on drive-thru. You probably saw that in the opening crawl there. But I have been switching jobs, moving states. There's been a lot of, like I said, a lot of life stuff happening. I am now back in my home state of North Carolina, and I am ready to kick things into high gear at this point. I'm ready to actually start doing this this career thing as far as game design is concerned.
Oh, that's great to hear. So, will there be a sequel to your current product?
Absolutely, there will be a sequel. The way that I'm looking at Nighthaven right now, I had my original idea that this was going to be a package deal with another creator, and that ended up falling through. So I had to take what I had. It was a finished manuscript. I just needed to flesh it out to the point where it was a complete book, something that I'd actually feel good about charging people money for.
Yeah.
And get it out. And so part of that was I didn't have a system. We were doing completely system agnostic. Our whole tagline, if those of you who saw the streams back then remember, it was your favorite D20 fantasy system. What I've discovered is that is a tremendous hindrance to marketing your book, because one of the first questions people ask you is, what's this for? And when you say it's for everything, people are generally pretty incredulous, as they should be. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of taking Nighthaven back to square one. The book that I have out there, it's a great book. I love all the art in it. I love the writing. I stand by every single thing that I put in the Rakes Codex Volume 1. However, I've got 3 projects lined up that are basically going to reboot Nighthaven. Mm-hmm. The first is I'm going back to my original Nighthaven adventure, O Night Divine. I am updating the layout, I don't know if I've told the story about how I laid that thing out on this show before, but I can do that in just a little bit. I'm
Sure.
updating the layout though. I'm adding in some new artwork, and I am retooling the adventure for Shadow Dark. I am doing the same thing for Volume 1. I'm going to expand the Rix Codex Volume 1 with some stuff that is Shadow Dark specific.
Mhm.
And then following that, I am going to do the Rix Codex Volume 2 in Shadow Dark, and then moving forward with Shadow Dark as my home system for the time being.
Sure, sure, that makes sense. I think a question some of the customers might have of your current product is, will they get an updated PDF, or is this a full relaunch?
Yeah, I will honor your purchase of the Rix Codex with an updated PDF. Um, Physical copies are going to be a little bit of a different matter. That's a big undertaking.
Oh yeah.
What I'll probably do there is a steep discount, like a 75% discount for people who have already bought into uh, the Rakes Codex. But yes, I am going to send the folks who have already purchased PDFs of Volume 1, the updated Shadow Dark Volume 1.
Okay, no, that's great. I'm sure people will be happy to hear that. Are you? Can you explain to those who are unfamiliar? I helped a little bit promoting this, but are you? Can you explain to people who are unfamiliar with the Rakes Codex, what is the main focus? What are you trying to present? What are you giving them that they don't currently have in Shadow Dark?
Yeah, so it's funny that you ask this because as I was coming up with this idea, Shadow Dark didn't have anything that supported this kind of play. Now, with the most recent Kickstarter that Arcane Library has done, it seems like they're starting to add in a little bit more support for the city crawl aspect of role playing.
Yep.
But what this is a black powder, dark fantasy, urban campaign that is very focused on faction play and the gang warfare aspect of city crawling. The
Cool.
idea here is basically to present, instead of a mega dungeon, here's a city that is functionally a mega dungeon in the way that you interface with it.
Okay. Will there be like gang warfare in terms of like territory acquisition as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Um, the way that it starts is I give you like volume 1 is the gate district, and in volume 1 you learn what gangs control certain aspects of the gate district. As you play, these territories are going to be up for grabs. Um, and that's just kind of a natural occurrence of, interacting with factions. There's going to be friction, and inevitably some player out there is going to decide, hey, I want to grab this territory. I want to be the one who controls the gate district. I want to control the commerce district. I want to control this gang or that gang. And so being able to facilitate just acquisitions of territory and essentially allowing people to, have their city-sized risk board of like, okay, this is mine now, this is mine now, this is mine now. That's what I want out of Nighthaven, is for people to kind of put themselves in the role of, I am the kingpin and I'm going to take over this entire city before the campaign is over.
Sure. And are there issues with like law enforcement? Do you kind of detail some of the city laws, or kind of
Mhm.
pseudo medieval? Because you're kind of, it sounds like 1600s maybe.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of anachronism because there are certain things people expect from, fantasy settings and whatnot. But I am focusing very much on kind of a early, I guess, early Westphalian, kind of late Renaissance. The English Civil War period is basically what
Yeah.
we're looking at in terms of technology, with some kind of futuristic anachronisms like revolvers. Just because I thought the idea of having revolvers would make for an interesting game. But a lot of the law and law enforcement is kind of based around that. Um, there are some, again, anachronisms when it comes to the way that law enforcement functions.
Hmm.
It kind of shook out that it's a little bit more like a modern police force than was ever present in a 17th century city. But
Sure.
are a lot of aspects of 17th century law that I wanted to keep intact. You know, the kind of martial ethic of every man of fighting age is expected to keep and maintain arms in the event that the city is invaded or you know, a general draft is called by the king. That kind of stuff I wanted to maintain, but the I guess kind of the unit structure of the guards is what ends up being a little bit more modern. Uh, but I wanted the guards to be a fully fleshed out and interactable faction that players could join if
Oh
they
yeah.
wanted to. So many city games automatically position the guard as, at best, this is a hindrance to you. At worst, you know, these are adversaries. I wanted them to be something where if you want to be a guard, here's how you be a guard, and here are the benefits to aligning yourself with the guard. Here are the drawbacks. So if you wanted to take over the city from the perspective of I want to be the captain of the guard, that's another option that's open to you in Nighthaven.
Nice. Now, do you present any unique plot lines, or is this more of a random generation thing? For example, do you have like a, I don't know, Jack the Ripper type antagonist who's just going around the city, or is this more roll for adventure style?
So I give you the tools to roll for adventures, but every part that I put out has a scenario attached.
Okay.
And the scenario is basically I've outlined these factions. Here's a way in which they are interacting with each other. So, Corpse Walk from Volume 1, I'll use that as an example. Uh, in Corpse Walk, there is a monster terrorizing the Gate District. Under normal circumstances, the guard would be locking down the entire district until they found this monster and killed it. In this adventure, though, for political reasons that you will have to unravel by interacting with the various factions, the guard has not done that. And so the players have to figure out, why aren't they doing this? They have to, you know, hunt down the monster if they so desire. And the monster is tied into a couple of the different factions because there is a kind of a domestic dispute going on between two leaders of two of the factions that are supposed to be working together in the city.
Okay.
And that all ties into the existence and presence of this monster in the city. I don't want to give away too much,
Sure. Sure.
but that's the kind of scenario. I set up an event that is happening or a conflict out to give a preview of what Volume 2 is going to be. That adventure is going to be called Powder Burns, and it is going to center around a shipment of gunpowder that has gone missing from Nighthaven's harbor. And so all of the gangs, there's two main gangs in that section of the city that I'm working on for part 2. They are vying for basically they know the location of this gunpowder. They know where it was taken. Now it's a matter of who can get to it first and who are the players going to assist. And that's where I kind of leave things open. Is here is a scenario happening in the city. You now have to align yourself with various factions. You've got to figure out who you're going to help, who you're going to hurt. Are you going to screw anyone over in this process? How are you going to come out on top of this? Do you want the gunpowder for yourself? Do you want to go ahead and say, screw both of you factions. I'm going to take over this gunpowder. You're going to have to come to me for it. That's the kind of scenario that I want to present in my writing. I don't want to make railroads for people, but I also want to give enough context for people who just want to run an adventure out of a book.
Sure. So let's say that me or Dundermoose or Patty, let's say that we wanted to run, take this this Nighthaven city, expand it out into maybe a country, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the black powder rules to address like cannons or larger scale gunpowder use, bombs and such?
I've
Uh,
got
yeah.
small arms and bombs. I have not done artillery yet. That's going to be something that's coming in the future.
Cool. That'll be really neat.
Hmm.
Because that's something I've done a 1600s like pseudo historical campaign, and the players actually seem to really enjoy getting to use cannons like against enemy
Yep.
fortifications and stuff. So that's something maybe in volume three. Uh,
Either 3 or 4. I haven't decided. So those rules are going to accompany the rules. When I talk about the kind of central government of Nighthaven and the military district that accompanies it,
mhm,
that's where kind of like larger scale armies and artillery and things like that are going to be discussed.
cool. And how about shipping? Do you have any sailing rules? Are you just kind of relying on whatever Shadow Dark supplies for that with this harbor and such?
Right now, I'm relying on what Shadow Dark gives me. The thing with sailing, I don't know much about sailing. Like, I don't know much about ships in general.
Mhm.
And I really don't know much about nautical simulation in role playing. So that's to at some point I want to make a pirate game, and so at some point I know I'm going
Oh,
to have to
very cool.
dig into that in excruciating detail, but I have not started on that yet.
Okay. Okay. That I think helps give people kind of a clear picture of what it is they're getting when they purchase this. And are the different volumes kind of focused on different, mostly almost districts in the city?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so with each volume, I've kind of taken the approach of a game designer named Warren Spectre, who people know from Deus Ex. He very famously talked about this ideal game that he conceptualized in his head of a single city block, but rendered in exceptional detail.
Mhm.
And so, what I'm doing here, because I'm not constrained by the limits of hardware, I'm taking that concept and I'm just kind of stacking them on top of each other. So I release, the first section in exhaustive detail, then the next section in exhaustive detail. And by the end, when you put all of these things together, you're going to have a extremely granular simulation of a city. But instead of putting all of that on myself up front, it's spread out. And
Oh,
then
sure.
the full picture becomes clear when you put it all together.
That's good. I think that's a good way to present it, especially if each unit is reasonably costed, and from what I've seen, it is. Um, Now, how hard would it be to convert, other than gunpowder rules, which based on system you'd have to mess around with a bit? But how hard do you think it'll be convert from say Shadow Dark to maybe 5e or some other D20 based system? Are most of the kind of difficulties and stuff gonna align well?
Yeah, I think so. Shadow Dark to 5e is a very one-to-one uh,
Yeah.
conversion. Their DNA is essentially identical.
Mhm.
Um, and I think Shadow Dark to BX is a pretty easy jump. Uh, I kind of designed Volume 1 on a vaguely BX, vaguely OSE template as kind of my universal gaming language. Um, So I think the conversion there is actually going to end up being pretty easy.
Good.
AD&D, you might have to do a little bit of digging, although it's just a matter of like advantage to or advantage and disadvantage to like, plus or minus 5, I believe is what at least what 5e says advantage kind of mathematically represents. Um, Shadow Dark doesn't have saving throws, so that might trip some people up. But honestly, a saving throw is just a stat roll by another name. So,
Yeah.
I can kind of see why Shadow Dark uh, didn't separate those two concepts out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, do you see Patty's question in the chat?
There we go.
He wants to know about your limits on this design crusade you're launching.
Um, So right now, my goal is Night Haven. Beyond Night Haven, once I get all these volumes out, and there's probably going to be 5, maybe 6. Um, that's when I'm going to take my system that I was talking about, the skeleton system. Before I went dark on Rolling Bones, I was talking a lot about the skeleton system I was working on. That's when I'm going to move that to the forefront. And once I move skeleton to the forefront, expanding into the rest of the continent of Dareholm is going to be my mission. And so I'll have Nighthaven to work from as a base, but with my new system, that's where I'll kind of, grow into the continent and visit some of the stuff that's out there. I've already talked a little bit about the lore of Dareholm in Volume 1, and there's going to be more to come, uh,
Cool.
especially when it comes to dragons. But that's going to be a few years down the road when I start to, flesh out this continent and really use it as my home base fantasy setting. Kind of my Forgotten Realms, if you will.
Sure. Now, will you include information about maybe a set earlier period, maybe based on what you're telling me, 300 to 500 years before, in the event people wanted to play just full medieval with the setting
Oh yeah.
eventually, not in the current books, just eventually?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
and there's to dig a little bit into the history of Dareholm and Nighthaven. Um, Nighthaven, in its current form, exists after the fall of basically 2 empires. The first was an empire of man, and the second was this kind of reign of terror of dragons. And so, going back to that time where man was ascendant, that will be kind of my medieval fantasy setting for people who don't want the black powder. That's what that time period is going to be, because I've kind of mapped out in my head this whole move from tribal man all the way up to essentially Renaissance
Yeah.
man, with the march of this empire and the growth of this empire. So anywhere from, like early, essentially like early Bronze Age, we're small tribes of men fantasy, up through your late medieval fantasy is what I want to enable with that aspect of the history.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's really interesting. Would you do you think you would you do a book that kind of explains the different periods, or just kind of have it included in different spots, or a single book per kind of period, like a Bronze Age one and a medieval one and an Imperial one and so on? Like what theoretically would be
Mhm.
your goal in half a decade?
So I would do the first thing I would do is a comprehensive Nighthaven book for the new system. That would kind of come out alongside the new system. But then after that, I would have my essentially my core fantasy book, and in that would be, uh, you know, kind of like a sliding scale timeline of, if you want this level of technology, you go back to this period on the timeline, and here's some of the information that you have about what's going on in the world. I don't want to explain too much about the world itself, because I want people to have room to explore and to
Of
make
course.
this world their own. But here are the major players, here are some of the major cities, here's what's going on broadly in these regions. And then, if you want this style of fantasy, here's where you go, and here's the lay of the land at this time period.
So it sounds like if people decide to buy into to your system, they're going to be learning a lot about future products, future setting information, and essentially there will be a payoff down the road as you continue to work on different products um, focused around this setting, this city, and this kind of larger world.
Oh yeah,
Is that
definitely.
fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay, very very interesting. Now, how how can people meet you in person? I remember we talked a little about upcoming events where you can hunt down Ryan Howard and say hi.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. Um, I took pretty much the year off from conventions. Just well, one, moving is expensive, and you know, trying to get my head right, trying to get things settled. And so I'm going to kind of kick off my convention season this November at MythicCon here in Charlotte. It's a small convention, but it's a lot of fun. It's extremely gaming focused. One of the best role playing conventions in the country for just like pure. I want to find a game.
Mhm.
It used to be called Mace, if anyone remembers it by that name, but now it's called MythicCon. And then in January of 2026, I will be attending.
Oh, we lost him a sec. Uh, Let me
Oh,
see if I can
we
grab
lost
him back.
connection there.
There he is.
That was weird.
You were saying page 3, I believe.
Yes. Yeah. So page 3. That's, you'll be able to find me there. Those games are already set. Like if you go buy a badge for page, you can sign up for my games. I think registration for gold badges begins tomorrow. So if you want to get it in on a game, it's already up there. So I'm for sure attending that convention. And then, of course, in June of 2026, I want to go back to North Texas. I'll have to see how things shake out, but I do plan on coming back to North Texas RPG Convention in 2026.
Well, I hope to drag you into a game there. At least there. We'll see. Page 3 sounds like it'll be a little busier.
Hmm. Oh, it might be. I haven't seen how many people have submitted games. It does seem like it's a little bit bigger, but again, I don't know. It's my first time going.
It'll be my first time too if things work out. I'm
Hmm.
I'm planning to share a booth with another company and hopefully get some games submitted. But game submissions will be a little late compared to the gold badges.
Yep.
And that's all right.
Well, it's good to submit games late because then the people who buy in late have something to go for.
That's true.
That's something I always try to buy a badge early because I want to get in games that I want to get in. But the people who submit games late really are providing a tremendous service to the people who waited to the last minute to register. Like essentially it's letting them know, okay, yes, even though you've bought a badge 2 months before the convention, there's still stuff that you can get in on. And it's not like crappy stuff either. It's good stuff. Um, so I don't see anything wrong with, late submissions as far as games go.
Now, are you planning to run anything? Can people play in a game where you're the DM?
Yes. Yeah, I have 3 sessions scheduled for Page. I don't have anything scheduled for Mythicon right now because they have not opened submissions yet. But I will also be running 3 sessions at Mythicon.
Okay. No booth or anything? Is there a plan for that?
No booth this time around. 2027, we'll see. But for 2026, no, I'm not going to do any booths.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. Are you open to other conventions? Like if someone's organizing a convention with 500, a few thousand people, and they don't want to invite you, is that something that you might want to do?
Yeah, if they want to invite me, certainly. Um,
Okay.
the thing about conventions right now, I'm not at the top of anyone's special guest list at this point, so I don't foresee being invited to conventions right now. But I mean, that would take a huge burden off of me if someone really wanted me at their convention and they made me a special guest. Yeah, that'd be a way to guarantee that I could get there. Because then the only thing is, can I get time off from work? Um, because it really is expensive to travel and get hotels and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Um, that's why I'm kind of limiting myself to 2 traveling conventions and then one where I can sleep at home.
Mhm.
Um, But yeah, I'm open to more. It's just a matter of like, can I make more work financially?
That makes sense. Have you ever done any private events? I'm curious because that's something Nate and I have been doing for 2 or 3 years now, where there'll be a group of like 10, 20 friends who basically rent a place for a weekend and invite us to come run games for them.
Hmm,
Pretty much, it's interesting. When we do that, we pretty much guarantee sales to every single person there. It's
interesting.
yeah. I don't know if you've ever done anything like that, but
I
it can
haven't.
be a lot of fun.
That that does sound interesting because one thing that I've been looking at now that I'm back in Charlotte, there's a game store. I'm very close with the owner. I've been going to that store uh, for over a decade, and so I've been wanting to run games there. But there's actually like 5 stores within a couple hours of each other. I'm very blessed being in this area because there's a lot of very good game stores within driving distance of here, and so something that I want to do at the very least for play testing of material is kind of make a circuit of these stores. And so, I can go to the one in Gastonia. I can go to the one, the Mighty Meeple in Concord. I can go to PBKW in Cornelius, and I can drive up to Atomic Empire in Durham. And these are all, very doable drives. I know people kind of in all of those areas, and so kind of setting up a local presence for myself is a priority moving forward. Just at the very least, a playtest, but a private event that's something I should look into because like you said, you guarantee sales that way.
I mean, yeah, pretty much. And depending on the convention, you might actually get more sales at a private event with 20 or 30 guys,
Hmm.
especially if you've got multiple products, than you would at a convention with 5, 600, 2,000 people, depending on how well known your product is, how interested people are in it, and a number of other factors.
Hmm.
So I did notice that when we do those, there's a much higher percentage of total attendees sale,
Hmm.
90 to 100%.
Yep.
Um,
And Patty
now,
makes a good point here in chat. A lot of game stores talk to locally will sell his stuff on consignment. That's another bridge I need to cross. Um, Getting physical product into a store. That's actually something I've been scheming and thinking about ways that I could help independent creators that have essentially very successful drive-through titles
mhm,
get those titles into stores because you can show the people who run these stores people have bought this book, they know what it is, it's just not available on store shelves. I know that space is limited. Here's how many people have already bought this book. If we can run an event in the store with the creator, if we can kind of get this displayed in some kind of way, um, I I think we can move this product, and
yeah,
I think that's a service that a lot of indie creators would like. My background is in sales. It's something I can do. It's just a massive undertaking. So I
now that's something I'd love to do in our local stores as
yeah.
well. But weirdly, the best inroads I've had is with a store in England.
Hmm, interesting.
Just yeah, just the random stuff, the opportunities that are presented. I'd love to though. We have similarly about 5 to 7 stores in our kind of greater Grand Rapids area in Michigan, and I'd love to see Horde Wars in those stores. And for that matter, for if you're a store owner and you're watching this now or later, and you're interested in hosting my products or Ryan's, please reach out.
Yeah.
We would
DMs are
love
open.
to work out a deal with you. I think that's fair to say.
Yep.
Now, are you planning to do any other projects that are not related to this kind of core um, black powder 16 to 1800s, depending, city adventure setting? are there other products, even small ones that you're thinking of in the coming year or two?
Um, Off the top of my head, no,
Hmm.
but we have like, we have a lot of friends that are working on cool stuff. I've always wanted to do something with Victor Gorchev.
Yeah.
He and I have talked back and forth a couple times about different ideas. If we came together and came up with something, that would become a priority for me to get that out there. Um, it's kind of a I don't have anything right now,
Oh, sure.
but I'm open to it.
Sure.
I'm very open to, especially with friends, especially with folks like you, with folks like Victor Gorchev.
Mm.
Um, if the basic expert had something that he wanted me to work on, I'd do something for him in a heartbeat. Uh, all those guys,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd be willing to work on a project for them.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I was curious in part because I know when I'm working on a product, sometimes it really helps me to work on something that's in a very different genre
yeah,
or a style, just to take your mind and think about stuff in a different way for a bit and then come back. And
mhm,
often when you do that, it's easier to write the thing you were writing.
yeah,
So, for example, working on a medieval dungeon while also working on this, that sort of thing.
yeah.
That's why I was curious. Um, and also, you mentioned the basic expert. Who is your intended artist for these upcoming projects?
So I've been working with a lot of great artists on uh, the Rakes Codex Volume One. Uh, Nolan Collins is a miracle worker.
Mm.
Um, Nolan, I hope you're watching this. You are the man. We all love you. Every time I see a piece from you, from Vic, or something that you send me, we go gaga over it. Another, a Michigander, much like yourself. Um, yeah, he's a great dude. Also, your friend Simeon Cochran
Yes.
is also someone who I would love to work with more in the future. He does great work. Uh, all the character portraits and item pictures, basically all the quarter page stuff is Simeon's work in Volume One. Um, I'd love to work with Patty. Patty's in the chat here. I'd love to be able to work with him on stuff. Um, Jesse White is the guy who did my chapter art. He is unbelievable. Uh, he turns in work that's very reminiscent of a comic book artist that I have admired for a long time, Tim Bradstreet. Um, Now Bradstreet would always take photos of a reference and then kind of draw off of the photo. I
Sure.
know that Jesse's not doing that because of the things that I've asked him to draw. I know that he doesn't have photo references for those. Um, but somehow he's able to get the same result as Tim Bradstreet. And so I greatly appreciate his talent, and he's in demand, but he's a guy that I definitely want to work with. And then I've also been talking to Lucas Court from Shadow Dark, uh, because if I'm working in Shadow Dark, I want to have a little bit of thematic cohesion.
Sure.
And uh, Lucas's art, it's expensive, but you are definitely getting what you pay for. And so judiciously using his work in mind to tie it back to the main system, that's a priority that I have moving forward. Um, so these are some of the guys that I want to work with, and obviously, basic experts in the mix there too. He did my cover for Volume One.
Yep.
Um, he's a great guy, a great friend. He hasn't kicked me out of his gilded, for which I am eternally grateful. So, uh, that any of these guys that I can give work to, I will happily give work to.
And what are guessing, or maybe you have real estimates? What are your approximate page counts on these upcoming volumes? the same as Volume One as it currently exists, or expanded, smaller, kind of varied depending on the district?
I'm thinking they're gonna expand a little bit. Volume 1 came in at around 150 pages, a little over that. Um, I'm trying to shoot for, like, 200 in an A5 digest size.
Hmm.
Um, something that is beefy and makes you feel like you actually are getting your money's worth, but, small enough that it's not taking up a bunch of room on your shelf. I like the idea of the digest-sized books. Uh I have a lot of insanely large books on my shelf right now. Um, I'm looking at Weird Frontiers on my
Hmm.
shelf. That thing, if you dropped it out of like a second story window, you could probably kill somebody with it. Um, I don't want books like that because they're very cumbersome. I like these digest sized books that people are putting out, but at the same time, I don't like the zine format. I like uh, Perfect Bound or Smithsonian
Yeah.
books that have production value but are, a reasonable size and easy to carry around.
Now, I personally like those 8.5 by 11 style ones, like
Mhm.
Pathfinder and D&D. But that's because on the shelf, at least if you have tall enough shelves, that's not any more space than a
Yeah.
digest one, and actually tends to be less space because it's making up in height what it would be in width.
Yeah.
Uh, so, but that's a personal preference, and also it may be because I'm older than you. Give it a decade, and we'll see if your eyesight lets you stay with the digests.
That's fair.
um, yeah, no, and it looks like Patty is familiar with a number of the artists you listed. I was familiar with most of them as well, but he had some, I think, good commentary.
Mhm.
If you wanted to show a couple of those for anyone who may not be able to see the chat later.
Yep. He calls out Simeon is very good at the texture side of things. Some of the pieces that he did for the small amount of space that I gave him to work in, um, he did some tremendous work. The first image that I asked him to do, just kind of as a proof of concept, was the big Barnaby, the dwarf smoking the pipe, and the way that the smoke kind of encircled that dwarven figure. I was just like, okay, yeah, you're in, you're
Yeah.
good. Let's work together. And
No,
then
I agree. He's done a great job for us. He did most of the work on Horde Wars Basic, and probably about a third of what you'll see in Advanced.
mhm. Yeah, he's wonderful. And then
No, I think
he's right about we talk about the basic expert as a friend and a streamer, but sometimes people may not realize because they've only interacted with him in certain areas. He's an amazing artist. He truly is a fantastic and versatile artist
yeah.
um, that can work in a lot of different styles.
That's quite true. I mean, if you are familiar with some of the other people that we talk with online, some of the projects by, for example, um, Black Lodge Games, or um, well, mine, yours, a number of others.
Mhm.
A lot of that cover art is the same dude.
Yeah. Yep.
Just doing different styles. He does like kind of a painting style though. Like he's doing it digitally, but he likes it to look like it was actually painted. Is the
Mhm.
main I think distinguishing flair that I've noticed.
Yep. Well, yeah, it's interesting. So this is something that you saw kind of in the core OSR a few years ago. Was you'd have these kind of common artists that you knew kind of tied these things together thematically. Um, we're kind of developing that in our own corner here,
Yeah.
but the difference here is I think the artists that we have are blowing those guys from the OSR books out of the water. Like they truly, I don't know where Vic found Nolan. I don't know. I think you and Simeon were like friends before you started working together. Because
Friend
you
of a
were
friend kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because you put me in touch with Simeon.
Yep.
Um, I don't know where half of these people came from. I just saw their work because they were working with someone that I'm friends with. And it's amazing just the hidden talents that we have in this industry, um, that the big guys aren't reaching out to
Oh yeah.
because they have their people that they want to work with. It it really is something that you will overpay for someone who's been doing this for 30 years when there's someone who's not tired of doing it that'll do it for half the price, uh, and turn in a better piece of art. Like, you don't have to pay whatever ungodly amount of money Jeff D is charging.
Oh
You
yeah.
can have Nolan Collins or Jesse White or Simeon Cochran do something equally good, if not better, for way less.
And have you seen Patty's map for Horde Wars? It's free on our website. It's that map of Valheim. That's the very first professional map that he did. Like he was learning to do it while making it, and
Nice.
it's great. It looks really good. It took him a little longer than he was expecting.
Let's see.
Um,
I'm gonna pull that up. Let's bring that on screen. You said it's on blackwallgames.com?
yeah, yeah, and it's a free download. You should
Gotcha.
be able to just pull it up like on the website itself.
Cool.
I can, yeah.
Oh, here
Just
we
go to
go.
the store, scroll down. There, you see it.
Yep. Let me go ahead and share so that y'all can see this. Yeah, that's awesome. Patty, we're gonna have to talk. I need someone to do maps. We're gonna have to talk.
Yeah, no, he did great. We had to go. We went back and forth a bit. If anyone's bored and want to see the process of how he was practicing and learning to do that, there's like 12 streams of him and me just hanging out while he's working on the map and talking about how to get it looking good and what might be better than this, or him coming up with a cool idea and fitting stuff in there. Like there's a whole island that is on that map because Patty thought it would be a good idea. That it was not a thing we were going to do.
Hmm.
That sort of stuff, and that was a lot of fun. It's a joy to work with an artist who's kind of willing to, do what you want, but willing to give you some cool ideas that they think would make it even better.
Yeah. Yeah, it truly is. It's a spirit of collaboration that you have to have giving instruction to an artist, because, and this is something I tried to explain this one time to another creator that was struggling, kind of coming from the other side.
Yeah,
Um, a great artist having kind of having trouble with the descriptive side of things. When you're doing visual art, you have an image in your head, and then you directly translate that to the paper, or as directly as you possibly can. When you have to describe words, or you have to use words as your medium, you take an image in your head, turn them into words, give them to someone else, and then they have to get as close to that image in your head as you put on paper as they can come up with. And there's like three more layers of separation between the idea in your head and what's going to end up on the paper when it's describing what you want to an artist, or even when you're just like writing an adventure. The thing that you see in your head is probably not what someone else is going to see when they read your text. And so grappling with that's like the main first hurdle to get over when it comes to writing in general. Is uh you have to synthesize these ideas that are bombarding you in your mind in such a way that you can essentially replicate them in other people's minds.
well, yeah, and that comes with writing like a setting, writing a rule set, making it as clear as possible so that as many people as possible understand exactly what you wrote and efficiently
Yep.
fitting it properly on the page in terms of layout, or so you don't have these little hanging single words at the end of paragraphs
Yep.
and stuff if you can avoid it. Um, is yeah, takes some effort. Um, and who's doing your layout?
Me, I'm doing my layout.
What software are you using?
Affinity.
2?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I use the same thing.
Mhm.
For those who don't know, Affinity 2 is probably one of the better deals on the market as
Yep.
far as uh, book creation software,
Oh yeah.
as far as publishing goes.
Hmm. Yeah, and the first time I did layout, to get back to that story that I've told this a few times on a few different shows, but
Yeah, go ahead.
I ended up doing layout by accident. When we were coming down to the wire on O Night Divine, the guy who was going to do our layout for that adventure, his computer went kaput. And so it just like it wasn't going to happen in time for Christmas. And so I said, okay, emergency, I'm doing it now. And so I'm Googling, like what to use for layout. I don't have a bajillion dollars that I can lay down every single month for Adobe. So that's out the window. I ended up using Canva to lay out my first adventure. It kind of worked a little bit. It was a pain in the butt. And
Yeah.
when I told people that it was laid out in Canva, they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, it's not as bad as I thought it was." Then you did this in Canva, yes, but whoa, I went blurry. There we go.
It,
All
it got
right, but yeah, I learned to use Affinity, and it's slightly better than when I did it in Canva. I'm still learning, but um, Affinity is a great tool. One-time license fee. They really ought to be sponsoring me at this point.
Now, if you figured out how to do some stuff that I haven't figured out, I'm gonna have you give me some lessons. But that's I'm using the same layout, man, and I keep having to learn stuff when we're working on new projects.
Yep.
It's I would say it's a bit of a learning cliff at first, but as
Yep.
far as the value for the cost, it's very good.
Hmm. Yeah, laying out volume one. During volume one, I was just like, this is insurmountable. This is I don't know how I'm going to finish this thing. I don't know how to make this look good. By the end of volume one, I was like, okay, the next time I do this is going to be a lot easier than this. Because
What that
I've already like futzed around with all of the beginner mistakes and stuff. Like I already know how to do the basics, so this should just be a lot easier the next time around.
how are tables going for you?
Oh, there is no making tables easier. Tables.
I'm cheating on those. I can tell you how to do it later if you want.
Yes,
It's
definitely.
it's basically when there's a table in our book, that's actually a picture. That's it's as a PDF, but like
Mhm.
it's being loaded essentially as an image underneath, and the rest is just being laid out around it.
Yep.
Um, and that works way better than trying to make tables in there.
Yep.
It also lets us, play around with the formatting a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's. I figured tables were a problem. I've heard a few people mention that.
Yep.
And are you using when you're doing this? So for Nighthaven, Rake's Codex, right?
Mhm.
Are you using if people buy the PDF? Is this hyperlinked table of contents? Is there like a sidebar they can go down and click to go to different chapters or subjects? Like, how do you support it electronically for people to use it?
I believe it's hyperlinked. I don't remember actually. um, I'm pretty sure it's hyperlinked. I think I went through the whole process of doing that. Um, I will have to check after the show, but I think I managed to do that at least to
Okay.
some degree.
Yeah, I wound up using anchors, so you have a sidebar you can use.
Yep.
I kind of prefer that personally for navigation, just because if you misclick and you've got a heavily hyperlinked document, you're going to be jumping all over by accident.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I know. Black Lodge Games tends to hyperlink theirs internally, which can be good. I think. Now, I had a couple other questions.
Hmm.
Maybe this isn't the the right way to ask, but when you're thinking about this idea for this continent, when you're thinking about the idea for this city, is there specific historical inspiration? Are you drawing from like the I don't know 1700s, 1600s London with 10 to 30,000 people? Are you pulling from like what are is there something that you are filing the serial numbers off of to kind of create this environment and then adding these fantastical elements?
So my my reference points are not historical for Nighthaven. There's some stuff that is like anyone who looks at pictures of Dubrovnik and then reads descriptions of Nighthaven, you'll realize that Nighthaven borrows heavily, at least from the geographical features of Dubrovnik. Um, that being said, my primary inspiration for Nighthaven is Basin City from the Sin City movie and
Nice.
comics.
Yep, yep. That's an interesting genre shift, though, as far as the time period.
Yep.
Now, are people going to get cool locations like Sin City? You've got like some really, I would say, iconic characters and locations. Is there a good deal of that people can expect? Like, is there a cool example you can give?
Yeah, so another inspiration that I had, and this one actually comes from Professor Dungeon Master. This is one of the first things that he and I talked about the first time we spoke on stream. Uh, his advice for designing cities is to look at Springfield from The Simpsons. You've got your kind of major landmarks, and you know when you go to these places, you're always going to find certain characters there. You go to Moe's, you're gonna find Moe. You know, you're always going to find Chief Wiggum at the donut shop, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's kind of how I viewed Nighthaven. You know, here's your major landmark, and you're going to find this person there. And so I try to tie people to specific locations as much as I possibly can. One, to help adventurers because, we need to go find this person, especially the GM. Yeah, okay, big city, where are they? Uh, Kind of tying them to a specific location in essentially 9 out of 10 circumstances. That's going to help them out a lot. If you go to the Sellswords mission of Kador, you're going to be able to talk to Brother Clement because he's the rector there. You're
And
going to be able to go to Big Barnaby's
what's
Tap House.
interesting about
Oh.
Brother Clement say? What makes
Um,
him unique?
so the interesting thing about Brother Clement in particular is he is a former knight squire that entered the priesthood essentially to save his own life. But his story is kind of revealed in back matter in the book. But the deal with him is uh, more so than a normal priest. He is a very adept warrior and swordsman
Okay.
that has essentially found himself kind of diverted from that path because of a conspiracy that involved his mentor.
Mhm. And so essentially, with these kind of backstories and presumably motivations as well,
Mhm.
you're kind of giving a rich fabric for people to play around with and
Yep.
to have their own adventures as time goes on in the city.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now, to switch modes a moment, you have rebranded from rolling the bones of your enemies to RGH Press. What does it stand for? Why the rebrand?
So anyone who follows me on X can probably surmise that RGH, those are my initials. So my name is Ryan Gregory Howard. Um, RGH is also, in my mind, it's real gaming here or real games here. I wanted it to have kind of a double meaning of being my initials, but also, you know, telling people that when you see this logo, you are going to get something that is a true, genuine game, in that it has rules that it adheres to strictly. They are necessary for you to interact with. We've recently discovered not everybody believes that is the way that things should be. Apparently, some of the earliest contributors to this hobby don't think the rules actually matter, which is a nightmare in and of itself. I don't even know if we want to go down that rabbit trail, but we can if we want to. But
We should, after the rebrand explanation.
yeah, but I want, like honestly, real games here. This is really a game. You are going to be able to play this competitively. You and your friends are going to be able to get together and play this game. This isn't a story engine. It's not you reading bits and pieces of my failed fantasy novel. It is your world to do with as you please. It is your game to play in your manner, and it can be played to win and should be played to win. So that it is a real game.
And the rules are applied equally, both to the enemies and to the protagonists.
Absolutely. That is the only way that any of this works.
Now that's fun. Now, why the medieval heraldry? What's that from?
So I got mildly obsessed with my own genealogy about 5 years ago because for the longest time, I just assumed it's a coincidence that me and Robert E. Howard have the same last name. Turns out it's not. That was my first mission, was can I actually link myself familially to Robert E. Howard? And the answer was yes, but very distantly. And that's kind of old news as far as me. That's like the first thing that people wanted to point out about me, was that I was related to him. But in doing so, I discovered some very cool things about my ancestors. My great 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 grandfather, I believe, was in Pickett's Charge in Gettysburg. Uh, Going all the way back, my family has been in the United States since before there was a United States. We've been here since the 1600s. I'm related to a former governor, like colonial governor of Virginia, and I am also in an offshoot branch of a family that is still in power in England as far as like having noble title. There is a dukedom under the family Howard in England that still exists today, and I am not in line for it by any means, but I am related to those folks. And in doing that research, I've found I had an ancestor who was a knight of the Garter, which is one of the most prestigious knightly orders that could be attained. It's literally like, this is the order dedicated to Saint George, who is the patron saint of England. And there was a Howard who was a knight of the Garter. And so in doing this, I discovered all of this heraldry that was associated with my family, and I found some common motifs there. The lion is a common motif. That specific crosslet that you see in there, that was part of it. There was a lot of helmets. It seems like there was a lot of military service in my distant family, probably going back to the Crusades, just based on the kind of modification of that crosslet from the St. James cross. That's a Crusader symbol. So there's this kind of ancient heritage that I'm a part of, that I'm disconnected from. And so I wanted to incorporate that in my brand.
Cool.
Because along with a lot of that stuff, you know, we think of knights, we think of knightly virtues. We think of dedication, loyalty, bravery, and these are the kinds of things that I want to bring out of people with my games. I want to shoot for something loftier than, you know, this is a way to waste a few hours on a Saturday. Fantasy has a tradition of being aspirational. It comes out of myths that were designed to teach actual lessons. It comes out of morality plays. It comes out of fables. And somewhere along the way, somewhere kind of post Tolkien, although Tolkien very much was about the virtues of fantasy, we lost our connection with fantasy being something that should like bring about a change in you and encourage you through this kind of parabolic telling or this allegorical story, you know, essentially show you how to be a better person. And so if I could kind of link to those virtues through my family history and use that kind of as my inspiration of, I'm going to put this logo on something. I want that to mean something to the people out there. That's what I want it to mean, is that you will be aiming higher when you participate in these games. You will be engaging in something that seeks to make you a better person. And I know I sound like I am all the way up my ass right now, but
so what you're saying is morality matters in RPGs.
yes.
That RPGs that reward you to some degree for making good moral decisions can impact your real life.
Yes.
Can help you practice doing the thing you should be doing anyway.
Yes.
That makes sense. Now, Black Lodge Games, speaking of them, hi guys.
Yeah. Welcome, guys.
I agree with you philosophically, by the way. I think we just spend a paragraph on it in Horde Wars mentioning that, but we in that book we spend very little time talking about anything that isn't the game itself. But we do spend a paragraph talking about morality mattering in RPGs, that it really matters that the villains be truly villainous and that the heroes have redeeming qualities. So yeah, that makes sense. I'm glad that is still something you're holding firm to.
Yeah.
Now, how does your Nighthaven, how do you help embody that for the characters, the player characters? How do you bring that philosophy to life?
So in Nighthaven, Nighthaven is a world that is essentially just completely and totally broken. As you discover in exploring Nighthaven, you're sitting on top of essentially a source of tremendous evil, and people have just been kind of existing in proximity to this evil since the city was discovered. And so at a certain point, you have to either allow that evil to completely swallow you whole, and that's really what the majority of people do. How much treasure and power can I hold on to before this thing eventually devours me? Or how can I fight back that evil? How can I contain it? How can I push it back down further into the stone to make this place a little bit better, a little bit safer? And that's what I want to encourage people to do. And I know I've talked a lot about gang warfare and being kingpins and stuff like that, and that's definitely a thing that's present, and that's what a lot of people are going to want to do because this is a very noirish game. But there's another part of the noir world of this, rejection that everything has to be eternally dark and eternally evil. Even though we're the only lone opposition to all of this darkness around us, we're going to die fighting it, by God. And maybe by the end of it, we'll have weakened it enough that some of these innocent people who are caught up in this kind of vortex of evil will be able to go about their business with a little bit less weighing down on them.
So essentially, the setting is crying for heroes.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's a good way to embody to embody that, or encourage players who might otherwise go, "Oh, the world's fine," but if they see lots of people in trouble and problems happening and corruption, and they may make good choices. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Now, did you want to talk about the minor controversy the other day?
Yep. Yeah, we can talk about that.
Would you like to? So, would you like to explain who ignited the small internet firestorm, or are we not throwing him under the bus?
All right. I guess we should. And let's see if I can bring up the tweets even. Um, my good friend Victor Gorchev, everyone's favorite Dutchman, the number one sex symbol of the Netherlands, as I like to say, um, really has a way of kicking off just wild controversy with the most innocuous of statements. I remember a few years ago him kicking up a firestorm just by saying that a first level fighter is a veteran. That's an old controversy, but uh, that was another one of those things. Um, I think Vic might have deleted the tweet.
Oh, let me find it a sec. He might have, but he reposted a longer one.
Mhm. But
Uh,
basically, the general gist was Vic was saying that uh, in order to even discuss rules online, rules of role playing games, there has to be some kind of baseline that we all adhere to. That's what rules as written is. That's the baseline. If we're not able to talk about those rules, if every time we discuss rules, it turns into, well, this is what we do and it's completely different from what they do, there's no replicability.
right. That
Uh,
you need a common parlance
yeah.
based on the rules of the games you actually have,
Mhm.
physically or digitally, and that if you don't use that common language, meaning those rules and their definitions,
Mhm.
then you might as well just be screaming into the void. You're not
Yeah.
communicating anything.
Yeah. Absolutely. And in saying that, he also said, obviously you can't be kicking people's doors down to tell them how to play their game. And in comes Rob Kuntz, and he's got opinions, and he thinks it's just awful that the implication of this post on X is that people should have enforcers kicking their doors down. His text I actually can read verbatim because uh, what what Vic said was no one can really police what people do in their own private game, and I can share the screen now because I have it pulled up.
Hmm.
Um,
I want to zoom in a little.
and and O Rabo says a very disturbing line of thought, as it suggests that if one could police these games, that it should be done. Better should not police. As Gary indicated, if you don't like the way I do it, change the bloody rules. I didn't realize Gary was British. Um, how many editions of D&D have there been? In my view, the authors keep changing the rules from then to now, just as Gary changed what Arneson was doing. They did that for money,
Yeah.
sir. And thank goodness that there is no gatekeepers and everyone can tailor the game to the way they see fit, just as Gary and Arneson and I did. Oh boy.
I mean, that's quite the mouthful, but basically,
Yeah.
um, he's wrong.
Yeah.
The short version is when they did that, they had rules that they understood that they were then editing
Yeah.
and changing. So, in order to do what he imagines is a good thing, and sometimes can be a good thing if you have a good understanding of a rule set, which is making new rules that maybe improve a system or creating a
Mhm.
new but related system, um, he's ignoring that he needed to know how the system worked in the first place.
Mhm. Yeah. It always comes back to the fence. It's GK Chesterton all the way down. It's always going to come back to that stupid fence. If you don't know why it was put up, you can't tear it down. And
Well, you shouldn't tear it down.
yes, you shouldn't tear it down. Um, and we're just going to keep having this conversation over and over again, I guess, uh, because for some reason RPGs are the only medium where it's just whatever you want it to be, bro. It's just it's a vibe. That's all it's vibes based gaming is what we're dealing with here. Um, for some reason, people can comprehend that if you take away, uh, touchdowns and uh, extra points and all that stuff from football, it's not football anymore. If
Yeah.
you are using your hands, you're not playing soccer. They can comprehend that. But if you start taking away rules from D&D or Pathfinder or, name your RPG system, it's still the same. It's still D&D, man. It's just my version of D&D. No, why is it that these games are not treated as games? And that's another reason why real games are here, because we understand that the rules are what makes a game a game. And when you start changing them, you fundamentally alter the nature of the game.
Often.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're adding a rule that the game perhaps doesn't address.
Mhm.
Maybe you have a black powder campaign and you're playing a rule set that doesn't have black powder rules. Well,
Right.
okay.
Like Shadow Dark.
Yeah, yeah. So now you need to
Mhm.
write a rule set to account for that,
Yep.
which you have or are in the process of.
Mhm.
Um, and so that is a different thing than disassembling the game you came to be playing or claim to be playing,
Yep.
um, which is what mostly is being advocated.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and the thing is, that's not necessarily bad. Sometimes there are real errors in game design that are a bad idea. Like, objectively weren't the best choice that could have been made.
Yeah.
But to know that, you have to actually learn the system in the first place. And Vic was talking about that understanding systems, understanding rules, that when you are discussing a particular game, whether it's 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons or a specific BX clone,
Yep.
that the language needs to match the rules when you talk about it, the actual written rules, because if it doesn't, you can't communicate usefully.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And this is another reason why I feel as if I'm on uh, something of a crusade now. And again, I keep making it sound more grandiose than it actually is. But these are the kinds of things that the elder statesmen of gaming are saying. And you'll see, similar stupid things from the likes of Sandy Peterson. He's another one that I'm constantly hammering in my Substack articles. These are the guys who should be kind of defending the fundamental nature of what these games are. And I think Gary Gygax understood that games are games. Everything that I've read of his, he seems to understand that the nature of a game is its rules, and those are essential. When you start taking those away, you start changing the essence of what the game is. None of his acolytes seem to have comprehended that, though, and certainly none of the ones that are still active and participating in the discourse online
Mhm.
seem to realize that no, it's not just make stuff up, because when RPGs turn into just make stuff up, it becomes playing Power Rangers with your friends on the playground
Yes.
just immediately. There has to be a structure to this, because it's a game. And the fact that it seems like the most simple concept in the world. Multiple people on this side of the street have tried to explain this in multiple different ways. All it comes down to is all games are simulations. The parameters of your simulation are set by the rules. So, GNS theory, we're going to go ahead and torpedo that rusty hulk of a ship like it should have been done a long time ago. All games are simulations. The parameters of your simulations are the rules. When you change those parameters, you fundamentally alter the simulation.
Yeah, though in some cases in an augmentation sense. So,
Yes.
for example, Alchemil Raker's Hellmarch book
Mm,
is going, hey, here's a war game way to handle if you've got some mass combat or
yeah.
pseudo mass combat
Mm,
with tens or hundreds or scores or thousands of guys on a side.
yep.
Here's a way to handle it, especially if the game you're playing doesn't handle it. Here's this supplemental rule set to handle this scenario. Rather,
Mm,
like if someone were to, with the game you're working on, right?
yep.
With the setting, if someone were to come up with some good Shadow Dark sailing rules that aren't
Yeah.
official, you might be like, yeah, you should use those.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
And
it's not what your game is covering.
yep. And what that comes down to is it's the concept of building out versus like I guess, tearing down foundational materials.
Yes.
You're building on the same foundation. You're building outward, you're building upward in some cases. But you're not, knocking down load bearing walls
Yeah.
because you're like, oh, I want this room to be more open. Oh, that wall was actually holding up the entire house.
Yeah. I definitely ran into that. So when Horde Wars Basic came out, some of our customers had suggestions for rules changes. A couple of them weren't the worst ideas, but
Mm,
almost all of them were based on a not understanding the whole system
yeah,
yet. And that once they started to get the system, they realized why those were not a good idea.
yeah,
And a lot of the modern advocacy for, well, just kind of do whatever you want as long as you're having fun, it's fine. I mean, yeah, kind of, but as long as you're having fun, it's fine isn't really the same thing as long as you're having fun, you're playing this specific game.
hmm,
If you're claiming to play Dungeons and Dragons, there are certain things that are true of that game, and as soon
yeah,
as you remove them, you're not playing that game, you're doing something else.
yeah.
um,
And the
yeah.
thing that gets me about Kunt specifically being the one to advocate for this, he has been extremely vocal about the takeover of the hobby from without, from the crazies, the barbarians. Um, he has lamented that they have essentially destroyed what he claims to have built. But here he is advocating for the very thing that allowed them to do that, and saying that if you push back at all on the concept of uh, essentially, don't yuck my yum, whatever you want to do, do as thou wilt, is really what it comes down to. Um, Not to throw that accusation around lightly, but that's the
No, that's what he said in a really long way.
yes, but that is the core conceit that allows those people to come in and destroy this hobby and just really anything of substance that has been built up. This concept of do as thou wilt is their philosophy, and all he's done in this little screed to a very innocuous and very salient point that Vic was making is reinforce why his hobby got taken away from him. And so if he's just willing to hand it over like that, if he's not willing to push back against the core concept that animates his enemies, then he's not a defender of the hobby, and just needs to be put out to pasture.
Yeah, I mean, that's. You can tell that his position has changed if you simply look at his resume. His actual job at one point was taking a rule set, updating it, and publishing the result. That was
Hmm.
his. He was supposed to do that with a specific war game, and I believe he did it with other products as well. His job actually required understanding the rules and modifying them,
Yeah.
and that was all he was doing. Like, so at one point, he clearly did agree with you, at least functionally. Because if he didn't, he
Hmm.
couldn't have done his job.
Yep.
Um, and so it's a shame that that has changed. And I'm not against innovation. I do
Right.
think AD&D was fun. it's what I started playing.
Mhm.
Uh, Jason appears to still be playing, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
But it is not the best RPG you can play. Depending on your goals and your metrics. If your
Right.
goals are quick turn order and exciting combats, that's probably not the best game, although it's certainly better than others. Um, if you're, I know if your goal is, for example, simply to have a rule set you're familiar with because you grew up with it, and so it's quick for you guys, sure. But would you want to teach an 8-year-old to play AD&D now? I would suggest not.
Yeah. That'd be difficult. But
I think it wouldn't be as fun for them as it was for you at that age.
hmm. Well, and Jason, I like AD&D as well, but we can't just advocate for having a stuck culture.
Yeah.
It like we have to be able to innovate and iterate. We can't just say, oh, we have the original 6 Star Wars films or we have AD&D and we don't need anything else more. You fossilize yourself at that point. You've put yourself in amber when you think like that. What you should be thinking is, I love these things. And if that's enough for you, then okay, that's enough for you. But if they inspire you to create, then you should use those tools to create.
Yeah.
They and the pernicious trick of the people who kind of lord over our hobbies right now is they have convinced everyone that only they can create when all they're doing is destroying. Um, and so we just need to take creativity back from them and assert, no, you can't. You actually aren't creating, you're destroying. Here is me creating. And so like we can't just cling to these things of the past. We always have them. We'll always be able to go back to them and remember them. But we do at some point have to move on from them and keep the fire burning and keep the culture moving forward, just in uh you know towards something better, not towards the destructive individualism of the current uh custodians of these properties.
Yeah. Yeah, and there were some real, and there are in every game. There are going to be some design errors, whether it's a bad editing choice, whether it's someone just didn't think something through quite right,
Hmm.
or how it interacts with something else. You're going to run into these kinds of errors,
Yeah.
and um, when you get to a very old game, the errors tend to be pretty well known. That is one
Yes.
advantage.
Hmm.
Um, but on the other hand, people tend to be intractable and don't want to change it because it's an old game.
Yep.
Uh, and that's so. I think working on new products for existing games, working on new game systems that try to address things like younger people's today's limited attention span, whether you like it or not, especially in the West, which is where most RPGs are sold. Um, People under 30, people under 25 do not have the attention span you did at that age.
Right.
They just don't.
Hmm.
And a lot of that's cell phones. Some of it's, TV and video games. Mostly, though, the cell phone thing.
Hmm.
And the upshot is, well, you need a different game then to
Yep.
capture that audience, to get them to want to play. They're not going to sit around for 10 minutes for their turn. They're going to be on their phones screwing around, and they'll have no idea what's happening in the game.
Hmm.
You need a game that's designed for the younger audience there. Um, and so an AD&D specifically isn't the solution for them. Um,
Right.
and the same is true for fifth edition D&D. Not just to pick on an older one. Fifth edition D&D isn't a good game after about level 12. The math
Hmm.
breaks down.
Yep.
Like, there are actual design flaws inherent in the system, and the advantage disadvantage mechanic was pushed too hard, where it's stacked on a bunch of different things, and eventually you hit a point where it isn't useful. It doesn't mean anything
Yeah.
that you've gained an advantage because you have these other three that are all also applying.
Yeah.
Um, and those were design flaws.
Hmm.
Um, and Wizards kind of acknowledged this with an attempt to release a soft new edition,
Yeah.
which added a
Hmm.
bunch of other stuff that isn't particularly good. But in third edition, same problem. That's why there was a 3.5. Part of why
Hmm.
was there were some errors in the design.
Yep.
You know.
Well, and I've come to the conclusion that RPGs basically evolved along the wrong path. Um, Starting in 2000 and moving on into today, RPGs became more like their video game counterpart. It doesn't seem like anyone, and I know that they did that because people were becoming more familiar with video games. Like that was their introduction to the concept of an RPG more so than actual pen and paper
Sure.
RPGs or fantasy novels. But the reason why those games are designed the way they are meant to emulate these tabletop games, but they have to make concessions because there's hardware limits. And so we've taken these concessions that come from hardware limits and put them on something that has no hardware. We don't need to constantly be dealing damage in order to contribute to a combat round. That's one of the big things that I've been picking on recently.
Well,
The
fourth edition was pretty bad about
Yeah,
that.
the rogue and the wizard don't have to make the enemy's HP go down every single round in order to be just as valid as the fighter. That's not their role. That's not their job. So we need to kind of remove ourselves from this kind of path of evolution that RPGs have gone down. And I think Jason is right that kind of AD&D represents that last stop point that maybe we need to go back to and iterate forward from. And that's part of what I'm doing. I love AD&D. I think it's a good system, and I'd like to use it to inform my game moving forward. But ultimately, we can't just stay like we can't just go back. We can't return as
Oh,
people like to post. We have to actually find some kind of new path forward.
oh, I agree. I mean, the rules cyclopedia was very much the springboard and inspiration for Horde Wars. It
Hmm.
was like, oh, this is a whole game in one book that deals with domain play, addresses magic items of various sorts, gives me a bit of a setting, has rules for mass combat, has a bunch of monsters, has all the stuff you need for the characters in a single volume. Was their layout good? No, no, their layout was not
No.
good. It's hard to read, actually.
Hmm.
I owned the book for years. It was great. I wound up giving it away a year or so ago to someone who was really excited to win it. But that was the springboard for us to go, okay, that was cool. How could we make something like that that's better and that will play faster? And by
Hmm.
better, to be clear, what I mean is include more game content in the same amount of space
Yeah.
and also play quicker at the table. Because whether you're, 8 or 12 years old or 80, we only have so much time on this earth.
Yep.
And it's not terribly fun to have games where you don't get to do anything for long periods of time.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, and that's how we have to create. We have to go back to this idea of instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, like I've been all over Draw Steel, which by the way, where is Draw Steel? Does Draw Steel come out?
Not that I know of.
Uh, I've been all over Draw Steel about how essentially doggedly dedicated Matt Colville is to just completely throwing out the D20 mechanic to the point where he has gone all the way around his elbow to get to his asshole just to avoid using it. But we don't need to be thinking like that. It doesn't have to all be 100% new, because sometimes that just means it's incoherent. We just have to understand how the existing tools work, start taking them apart, and start rearranging them. That only works if you understand how it worked to begin with.
Exactly. Exactly. It requires a level of system or rules mastery to make intelligent adjustments. It's
Yep.
like if you're a computer programmer, making changes at random to a program you're not familiar with is a dumb idea.
Yeah.
What you should do is try to understand what the program is doing and then edit it. Because pretty much any other time you add code, you're just gonna crash it or cause weird errors
Yep.
because you didn't think through what you were doing. And that's pretty much what Vic was advocating, that you need to get some understanding and a way to communicate that usefully. Like if I ask you, what is the core resolution die for your game? That should mean something specific. If you tell me that you have a game where it's skill, not level based, those words should have meaning as regards to character advancement and so on.
Mm.
And if they don't, then why are you even talking about it? No one will understand you anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. Does that make sense to you?
It does. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of, are there any mechanics that are unique to your products, where other than the black powder stuff,
Mm.
that you are particularly proud of or want to share?
So in volume 1, nothing really comes up mechanically that's very different aside from just the black powder.
Mhm.
What I'm working on for volume 2 and moving forward, though, is implementing a system that makes one-to-one dueling, like one-on-one combat,
Yeah.
a little bit more granular than regular combat. And so what I'm playing around with there is opposed dice rolls versus uh, a dice roll versus AC. So in defending against an attack, having to roll a dice yourself
Oh,
and
sure.
trying to beat that. No, this is an idea that I'm trying to bring in and trying to see how it works with Shadow Dark, because it's a core mechanic that I really want in Project Skeleton. Because I find that when players have kind of a thing that they can do, um, kind of contra what's being done to them, they're less likely to just sit there and stack dice and be like, "Oh yeah, I take 10 damage. I'll write that down."
Oh,
They're more
absolutely.
they're more engaged in combat, and they're more ready when they're like, "Oh, I have to roll my parry now, or I have to roll to, see if I can uh disarm this guy with,
So, no, that makes sense. But a question: how are you going to deal with two-on-two duels? Those were quite common,
Mhm.
and when one's taken out, because now you've got a two-on-one situation, are your rules going to be able to deal with that?
So that's one that I'd have to think about, but I can see it kind of working with the advantage system, and that you in 5th edition,
Yeah.
when you use the help action, you grant advantage on the roll. So to think of it almost like a help action that you're taking, to have like a 2-on-1 duel situation,
Hmm.
it seems like rolling with advantage, because you have someone else coming in, and then maybe, like, you both get to roll damage if you
What about the defender? Does he get to try to defend against both, or does he have to kind of pick?
um
That's what I was getting at,
yeah,
actually.
I'm with the defender. I mean, he would probably, I think,
Stumping him, guys.
maybe the way to think about it,
Yeah.
and this is maybe the way to think about it, is you have 2 attack rolls from both attackers. So rather than that granting
Yeah.
advantage, it grants disadvantage on the defense roll.
Oh, now see, that's a good solution, especially when you're dealing with typically. either 2-on-2, 1-on-1, or maybe a 2-on-1 situation
Yep.
in the context of a duel. You could
Mhm.
probably also kind of have it work in like a 3 or 4 on the side. I think any more than that, you'll run into problems.
Yep.
But that could be really good for like a Three Musketeers type thing.
Mhm. So like you have two people attacking one person, he has disadvantage on his parry roll, and then
Yeah.
has to compare that roll to the two attack rolls that are up against him. So
Yeah.
it does kind of put a lot on the person being on the person defending, but then again, you're in a 2-on-1 fight, a lot's being put on you.
Of
So
course, you could also have them roll twice and apply one die to one to the other. That
yeah.
do much the same.
Mhm.
But that's interesting. I like that idea. If you're not now, but if you're bored at some point, I'm curious what you think of how we did the how we tried to address a similar challenge for Horde Wars, because we do actually have a
Mhm.
Blade Master who's very much meant to duel people.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, I'm curious what you'd make of it.
Mhm.
Um, but that sounds pretty neat. Do you plan to try to incorporate special actions as well? I mean, beyond just Game Master Fiat, but just going, yeah, you can try to disarm, and this is how to do that.
Mhm. So I'm currently working on a class that will be added to Volume 1.
Hmm.
And it's a swashbuckler class. But the thing that the swashbuckler does differently, um, one, he gets advantage on improvised actions in combat. So
Yeah,
if he decides to swing on the chandelier and kick someone across the room, he's going to get advantage on that because he's a daring swashbuckler. But then the
sure.
other thing, he gets to use a mind gouge, so he has a parrying dagger, and um, when he wants to parry, he foregoes all the protection of his AC and puts it all on an opposed roll, a parry roll. If he succeeds, there are a certain number of maneuvers that he can perform as a riposte. So he succeeds and he's able to do like a thrust kick where he kicks someone back,
Yeah,
or he's able to disarm them, or if he's using a cloak instead of a dagger, he can ensnare them so that they can't get away from him, and now he has advantage on his next attack. That's something that I am currently actively playtesting. My home campaign, my dad is actually playing a swashbuckler using those rules,
okay.
so we're gonna see how that works out in combat here probably in the next couple sessions.
I like that. And are you guys are all playing in person, I assume. It's like
Yep.
him and your brother-in-law, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, in the event you decide that you want a villain to come by and try to slaughter them, you let me know. I'd be happy to pop in via the internet.
Will do.
Um, uh, I'll try to really deepen my voice to play it up. Yeah. Now, do you have anything else that you would like to cover before we wrap things up and kind of recap what we went over?
Um, the only last thing I want to talk about, a couple people have mentioned this in chat. Um, I am wearing a suit right now at 10 o'clock at night on a stream, which is not normal for me. So I did kind of want to talk about that, and that gets into some of what we were talking about with Rob Kuntz and the perception of role playing games. I'm wearing the suit right now because I want to look my best. I want to look like a professional, and I want that to also reflect on my products.
Yeah.
This is a business, and this is how in the business that I'm in, this is how business people dress.
Hmm.
So we have a long history of this kind of Silicon Valley type of casualness that people have when it comes to presenting themselves, presenting their companies. I think we need to move past that. I think we need to kind of elevate our game here. And part of that is elevating our aesthetic. So I'm going to take that on myself And when I make appearances on streams, when I'm at conventions, I am going to look my best. And hopefully, by looking my best, I have my mind in its best place and I'm presenting my best work so that people see me. And, I stand out because I'm not wearing cargo shorts, but also the professionalism that I project from dressing well, I hope can also be reflected in my games. Because if people buy my games and they're like, "Hey, he looks nice in that blazer, but this game's a piece of crap," then it's all gone.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm hoping that by looking the part first, I am able to kind of bring myself to uh, essentially a higher level of professionalism and a higher level of professional output. Uh, Jason, rent a tux. Okay,
He
it's
is
not
supporting you.
it's not about like looking as fancy as I possibly can. It's about dressing appropriately. When I go to conventions for my day job, I'm expected to dress up a little bit because I'm going to be networking with other professionals. At the end of the day, that's what a convention is for creators: is we're networking with other professionals. So why not look like professionals? That's that's why not a tux, because it's not a black tie event. So
Oh, sure, sure. No, I definitely found that to be the case with North Texas. That was definitely more networking than
mhm.
some of the other conventions I've been to, which is good. Networking can be really useful. Um, and I do like the new look. If anyone was
Thank you.
wondering, yes, he did warn me. Uh, and yeah, I approve. Now, I personally don't especially like wearing suits.
Nah, it's okay.
Um, and today in particular,
Oh yeah.
I had a bit of a car wreck, and I'm mostly okay, but I was definitely not feeling like putting on anything too stiff.
Yep.
Um, so that said, I like this idea. I think it's a good one. I think there will be some practical implications based on the con. You go somewhere that's more humid, you might lose the blazer.
Yes.
Uh, but that is a good idea. Now, will you be bringing? I know it's pretty common in our industry. Will you be bringing business cards that people can get from you to get a hold of you at the conventions you attend?
Yes. I actually need to print up some new business cards. I have a bunch of Roll and Bones ones that I made a few years ago, but I need to update my business cards.
Okay, I think that'll be really good. Um, and oh, I forgot to ask earlier. When you said you were running games, are you going to be running Night Haven? Or are you going to be running something else?
Nighthaven.
Okay. And new material or stuff in the current book?
So at Page, I'll be running Powder Burns. Um,
Nice.
as kind of a means of playtesting and getting at some of the kinks and seeing how it works. I have run that adventure before. I ran it at North Texas 2024.
Hmm.
Um, but I'll be running that adventure in Philadelphia, and then at MythicCon, I'm mostly going to be running Powder Burns, but I'm going to do one session of O Night Divine because of the time of year. It's going to be pretty close to Thanksgiving, and so I think that'll be an appropriate time to break out a Christmas adventure for
Yeah,
those who believe in celebrating early.
that sounds really good. So that's helpful, I think, for anyone watching at the end here. If you decide to go to those conventions, you'll have some idea of what you're signing up for
Yep.
uh, to play with Ryan and to see what he is producing. Um, now, just to briefly recap, three conventions,
Yep.
three or more products coming up,
Yep.
and where can they find your products?
So for right now, Drive-Through RPG is where you're going to find the bulk of my products. We're going to do another PDF and POD release for O Night Divine this time. So there will be a POD version. There was not previously. And then, yeah, it's going to be Drive-Through moving forward for Volume 1 and Volume 2 and Shadow Dark. I'm probably going to do some kind of actual physical run of books this time, something hardcover for Volume 1 and Volume 2. I'm going to take the time to really dig into how to make that work. I'm going to try to budget for it. I am going to run another Kickstarter campaign next year. So hopefully I will have the money to be able to do something like that. But that's kind of where we're going is Drive-Through POD for those of you who want to get it kind of in an economical fashion, and then some hardcovers for people who really want to go in on it.
Sure. Oh, and I already know the answer, but for those who don't, is this black and white or color interior?
Black and white. I like a black and white interior. Specifically, I'm going to try to stick with black and white on cream color paper, just because I really like the way that came out in the Lulu edition of Volume 1. It's a really cool aesthetic, and so I hope to stick with that.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that's a good pairing. It makes it look like it's a little bit older paper almost.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really cool. And for those who didn't catch it at the beginning, I'm DM Blackwall. You can find my stuff on blackwallgames.com. We also do sell on Drive-Through RPG. I'd much prefer you buy through our website. We're there just because some people only want to buy through Drive-Through, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But by far, the bulk of our sales are through our website or in person at conventions and such. And yeah, at some point, maybe in the next 10 months, maybe the next 8, somewhere in there, I would love to talk with you again when we get close to releasing Dropship, because it uses the same core system as Horde Wars, but it's a full sci-fi game, should be about 300 pages, and we are in the process of statting out the starships themselves. The rules are written. We're just working on content at this point.
Gotcha. Yeah, definitely.
And the main artist.
Yeah.
And Patty is working on stuff too.
Yeah. And just to let people know, this is far from the last stream that I'll be doing here. I'm not going back to a weekly schedule like I had with Rollin' Bones. I'm probably going to do these things once a month, maybe twice a month, especially during Kickstarter seasons. When I have active campaigns, I'll probably move to twice a month, just to serve as kind of a means to update people. But for the most part, once a month. Next month, I already have my guest host lined up. He's someone that I wanted to have on before I ended Rollin' Bones. He is the editor of Rake's Codex Volume 1. Mr. Stephen Clements will be my co-host here. He's a great guy. That's going to be a great conversation. And this was a lot of fun. Thank you again so much for volunteering to do this and facilitating this kind of comeback.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I've seen a few guys from my Gilded server popping in, so that's been great. And a number of people that we know mutually, and it looks like some people who were just fans of your YouTube channel, which is great. Like that's good to see, and I hope a bunch more people watch this on the replay, and that you are continuing to be successful with your YouTube channel and with your products going forward.
Thank you. All right, well, guys, that's going to do it for this evening. One more thing to address. At the beginning of the show, you heard music playing as we were counting down to the start of the stream. That spot is going to be open. And that is not like my new theme song or anything. I want to keep that spot open for those of you out there who make music that you want to get out there. I know, I'm going to be talking to Basic Expert about playing some of his music, but I want that space to be open for anyone who's got music that they make that they want to get eyes and ears on. Just reach out to me if you've got some music that you want to play beforehand. No, like we're not doing like rock songs, or you're not going to get me to play "Feel Like Making Love" by Bad Company, or no copyrighted music is what I'm trying to say. Independent creators that want to get their music out there. That's what I'm looking for. Don't tell me to play Freebird or anything like that. But yeah, that's something that I want to do moving forward, is have ways for people in this hobby to share their music. So that's going to be there.
That's a really good thing to do.
Thank you. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, guys, thank you so much for watching tonight. Thank you again, DM Blackwall, for conducting this interview. Rest up. God knows you need it after tonight. And I will see you guys next month here with Stephen Clement. So until then, best wishes. And I love all of you. It is great to be back.